I am, so no introduction needed there, but our dear speaker does. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Again, this is Clay Wilson from Seven Eagle Group. I am honored to present to you today Jamie Blackhart. Jamie's career is defined in 3 decades of distinguished service as a Sergeant Major of the U.S. Army, followed by 2 decades of successful business leadership. Currently, Jamie is the force behind two key ventures in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area. He is the service connected disabled veteran small business owner of Old Army LLC, a fair trade coffee company, and the owner principal of Advisor Tactical Products, someone my previous employer did not appreciate. A company that he founded in 1999 and supplied quality top tier products to safety professionals, leveraging his experience, background in the tactical gear and product knowledge areas for companies like Surefire, Pelican, Leadwave, and other companies. Furthermore, Jamie, I apologize, serves as the board member and treasurer for the Army Aviation Society of America. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could get a round of applause for Jamie, I greatly appreciate it. And Jamie, as one fellow Army veteran to another, I do want to say thank you very much for your service. We are surrounded by Navy and Air Force people here, so it's nice to have someone on the right team here. I'm just kidding, everyone. So, Jamie, I just want to open it up for you and let you kick it off. Pretend that you are a Marvel superhero. What is your origin story and what led you to the Army?
Well, I joined the Army when I was 17. I wanted a part-time job. I was told I needed to do that or get out of the house. So I saw an ad in the newspaper for the National Guard, and 1 weekend a month. I thought, that sounds exactly perfect for me. 1 weekend a month. And it just turned into a lifelong ambition. And I was infantry the entire time, but they shift you around to different as needed locations. So I had well, for one period of time, I had transportation when a major walked up to me and said, I was a sergeant at the time, says, "Hey, you've had a 5-ton license for over a year with no accidents, right?" And I said, "Roger that, sir." 2 weeks later, I get orders in the mail saying I was OJT'd 88 Mike. Now I'm transportation. And which, I did that for about a year as a break, doing field trains and field problems, delivering actual food and supplies to soldiers. So that was cool. But eventually ended up getting me into a first sergeant position in Army Watercraft Unit. I've had really the best assignments from counter drug opportunities, Army Watercraft, did my infantry stuff, recruiting, and so I can't really complain. Drill sergeant's one of my favorites. So when I got out, my daughter asked me, what are you going to do when you get out? And I said, well, we're going to have a party. She goes, no, I mean, she was 12 at the time. She goes, no, I mean, about the hole in your life, 30 years. And I said, geez, that's a little deep. I said, well, I don't know. I was going to blow it off. She goes, well, let's think about it. What are you going to miss? And I said, well, I'm going to miss putting on my uniform, and I'm going to miss the people, miss the team. She goes, well, I can't help you with the uniform, but you better start your own team. And that's when I started Old Army Coffee. Did that in 2018. Started Old Army Coffee. That is a low profit margin, high volume business that you need to get into. And so I started getting into other product licensing. And I'd say that product licensing and getting the trademark issued was probably the most important thing I did outside of just working for myself in sales. And so now we have Old Army hot sauce, barbecue sauce, wing sauce. I licensed that out to a company whose products are amazing. And I think I thought I had one here. So we have other Old Army ammunition, another company licensed that out. And we're working on other licensing programs, but I think that we learn an awful lot from other people in the industry. And I was telling Lauren a few weeks back that sometimes we need to focus on what went wrong when we're looking at our business and when we're situating ourselves in business. I'd rather hear from people what didn't work and what they did wrong so that I can learn from that and avoid it before I do the same thing. So now in order to reduce some costs, I started an import company. I own Advisor Munitions. I import guns and ammo, some knives out of Spain and other products. So if customers are looking for certain things, I can do that for them. You want to be looked at more than a salesperson. You want to be a business partner, and to have that financial and business acumen is going to get you a long ways. Because I've realized that there's a lot of sellers out there, salespeople, that just sound like a broken record, and you don't hear it when you're on the sales side of the table. But one time I had a friend of mine, most of my customers are friends. He was a buyer, and he said, "Hey, quick, come over here on the other side of the table with me and don't say anything. You got one of your competitors coming in." I'm like, "Okay." So I scurry around the table, sit and listen, and all of the buzzwords and all of the industry speak that was coming out of his mouth. When he left, I said, "Oh my God, do they all sound like that?" He goes, "Yeah, pretty much the same thing every time they come in." That's when I decided I wanted to be different and be viewed as a business partner, not just a salesperson. But I live in Spokane, Washington. I visit the free state of Idaho often, and we have been involved with Army Aviation Association of America for years, and I'm the treasurer for the Pacific Northwest chapter, the Rainier chapter, and trying to stay connected. So, and for all my Air Force friends, I spent a lot of time with aviators, and every time my Air Force friends saw the Army convoys go down the road, they say, "Poor Army." So I agree. I agree. Poor Army. And you'll notice our logo. So our logo we put it on everything, is the old Army Air Corps logo. It just says Old Army in it. And it's a way to branch the two largest branch, or bring together those two largest branches of service while staying connected and promoting the historical relevance from when the old Army Air Corps became the Air Force, when they got smart and said that ain't going to work for us. We need our own branch of service. So anyway, that's it. I mean, I could talk all day, and I know that's not really why we're here.
No, I appreciate it. And as someone who started out as 11 Bravo myself, I do appreciate it. Always chatting with a fellow grunt for sure. The one thing that I also like to ask people is that, when you were transitioning out, you dropped your papers, you walked away, and, your daughter asked you the question, what was the biggest cultural and operation shock for you when you sat there and made that hard transition after your daughter was daughter asked that question and you started everything rolling?
Well, I guess it was trying to come up with an idea of what I wanted to do. And if I wanted to do something kind of service related, or like Advisor Tactical Products is not necessarily has the ring of veteran to it. So I thought we got to come up with an idea. What was the last thing in the Army we were proud of? And I thought, well, no, ooh, no. And I had to keep going back further and further until we were back to World War II, greatest generation wars we were winning, non-polarizing, both sides of the aisle. Everyone could get behind their grandpa, great grandpa, whoever served, and they could invest in a product that's not polarizing. So you want to be able to have a product not just um, to the right or to the left politically, but you also want to have um, something that's uniting people. And that was kind of the whole premise behind the old Army coffee, getting started there. And I've stayed very, non-polarizing. Some competition out there will have brands and names of products that are super polarizing, and they don't care if the other people don't like it or not. That's not who they want as a customer. And that is a great targeted marketing approach. It's not my approach. So.
That's actually really interesting. We do see, I know people that have done very similar things. I'm very good friends with some of the guys at Black Rifle, and they want to have that shock value and things like that. What gave you that realization of not really being that way and kind of doing it a little bit differently?
Well, I guess partially because there's a lot of really good people out there that, you know, you're in America, you can believe what you want to believe. I'm of the belief it's great as long as you don't force it on me. And I don't want to force it on them. And yeah, Black Rifle's done a great job, but you'll never see a bag as black as F coffee at Target. So that's the direction that I'm like, maybe I could do something different here. But as it turns out, I have the good idea drawer where I take all these thoughts. Oh, I want to do this next. It's all a bandwidth and money issue. And you just file some of them away. Like I'm working on Old Army stogies right now, and I was working on Old Army bourbon, but highly regulated areas, and you're gonna have to have partners. So understand what you're getting into before you start heading down a certain trail, because you're gonna find out that there's gonna be obstacles there, intentional ones that you didn't know about. That's gonna either force you to go a different direction, or you're gonna have to get creative and find solutions for it.
That's the fact that you really had that strong intention to detail really shows it. And again, everyone who's here, if you got a question, don't be afraid to raise your hand or throw it in the chat and I'll read it out. When you stood up Advisor Tactical, what was, for you to maintain that longevity and that relevance, what was your thought process to it and how did you kind of come up with that idea besides the fact that I'm 11 Bravo, I've done it all, walk me through that thought process.
But I think the way it ended up where it's at today is that you have to remain flexible and be willing to make some changes if they make sense. So I started out with advisor security consulting, because I worked with the narcotics unit in Spokane, and everyone was constantly asking you for advice. What about my home security? What about, my business? And so finally one day a guy at a hotel asked me, and I said, well, I would love to help you, but since I actually have a business, a consulting business, I can't just tell you things to do because then I have some liability there. And he goes,
Yeah.
oh, you have a consulting business? I didn't. And I said, yes. And he says, okay, meet me on Friday. Let's talk about the entire security package for the hotel. I said, you got it. I ran down to Kinko's and made up some business cards. I went and got a contractor license at Office of Labor and Industry, and I showed up with my brother's laptop, pretending to type away on something when he walked in, and I had business cards and I had an actual business, and I got a job. I didn't even really wasn't looking for one. So we did the entire security package for the hotel, for both physical and mechanical security. And that's where that started. And then what I realized is I'm doing subcontractors along the way, so I can do the consulting and then I get the subcontractors and I make a little bit off of that. But a lot of times there's hardware involved. There's certain things that I could be selling to them and making the margin on. And so I started getting into more products, and eventually the tactical, advisors consulting and tactical products shifted into advisor tactical products. And then I was selling more stuff than I was consulting. And then I started taking on other manufacturers' products to sell, because I started generating a base of buyers who were buying products from me. And then that's how, I got into more of the sales agency role, is selling other people's products and then creating my own line within that to sell my own products right next to, my company's the national sales team for G-Shock watches. We have Boost Oxygen. We have Old Army, it's called Ammo Can Man products, and I sell those products into big box stores. So basically a large portion of my revenue is derived off selling other people's stuff, because I build and maintain relationships over time. That's where they get the value out of that.
That's a story I've heard a dozen times, and we'll chat later next week about who I mentioned before, like that a previous employer of mine. But all right, first question of the group, Chris, Mr. Moore, fire away, sir.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for coming on and talking with us. So it sounds like you're the idea guy. So I can just imagine your top left drawer of your desk just full of notes, sticky notes with ideas. Did you come up with the Old Army brand as a branding like umbrella before you started really pushing out with the coffee, or was it the other way around? The coffee came out first.
I did because I was talking with some graphics design friends of mine and said, I really want to get something started here, but I need something to put on the bag. And I feel like some thought needs to go into that before you just start slapping stuff together And so I started working on a cache of images. Old time, you'll notice like the majority of our images, you can go to oldarmy.com and see some stuff there. But it's all common source imagery that was war bonds or recruiting or nurse corps. They were all posters or advertisements back in the day, and we just modified them and put Old Army on them. Because like Cup of Joe, someone put in the comments, we do have a Cup of Joe. And the Cup of Joe guys has his little helmet on with his canteen cup. It says Old Army on it. And I get a lot of times people ask if that's me with my helmet on. And now I just say, oh yeah, it is. It's not. It's not me. But I thought it was important I mean, you can always shift your design and work on your product as you grow. For me, I had a logo, which is very similar to an Old Army Air Corps logo. It's not exactly the same. And I just have a word mark, trademark. So Old Army itself with no claim to any type of font, color or anything, just anything with Old Army on it falls into my trademark category. And that's if anyone has questions on that, when you're going to USPTO and you're getting your trademark, if since I was doing coffee, that category also covers everything else. I hope I have it sitting here. I do. I'll show you guys. This was from Old Army Bacon. We were going to do Old Army Bacon. This is that sleeve that goes over it, and you can see the bacon down here. And so we came up with Old Army Bacon. And, there's other items I wanted to do. Come to find out, grocery items are so far outside of what I do. Grocery itself is an entirely different animal. But to answer your question, yes, I put some thought into the branding, because you got to do the trademark searches and everything before you start putting your name on stuff so you don't get in trouble. You don't want to go out there and have a brand and it starts to grow and someone comes and tells you you're a trademark violation and you need to cease and desist, and then all your work takes a huge derailment until you can figure it out to get it back on track.
Oh, sounds good. Yeah, I'm the one that put the Cup of Joe down on the chat.
Yeah, we have that.
Talking, that was the imagery, was those symbolic, those cultural, patriotic posters. So very cool. Thanks.
All of them are, except for this particular one. This is a general's daughter. This particular one was a Norwegian artist, and he said he didn't have a problem with people using his artwork as long as you ask him. And so we asked him, and then we modified it because it was a pinup, so we cut off the bottom part of it, but we added the general star. I used to say captain on it, but anyway, so we modified some of that. But any old timey image, I mean, there's no end to the pool of imagery that you can build products around.
Fantastic. And that brought up a really good point, is always do your research prior to doing anything. If you want to be someone like Jamie or someone like anyone else out there. That brings up a really interesting question. I always ask like people like you. I come from an e-commerce background. So with your experience from the tactical space, what was the biggest challenge transitioning and kind of keeping your tactical product lines, but then transitioning to the practical lines, like your coffee and everything else like that? And life cycle wise, you mentioned Surefire on your website all over the place, and I'm like, they don't really change a lot of stuff. What was that biggest shock in terms of product life cycle for you?
Well, I mean, the sales cycle can be really challenging, because I started off wanting to do a lot more of government contract work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that easy. I watched War Dogs 10 times. I thought I got this figured out. That was my training video, except for the
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, have you watched that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, War Dogs, that's a classic. It shows you how a couple guys who barely even know what day it is can get on to the system for award management. Look up, it's not that easy anymore. They've made some drastic changes since that incident, but you can go in there and find opportunities and bid on them. And in their case, they won them. But I found out that's a lot more challenging, even being qualified for set aside money for disabled veteran owned business. And there's more money and this life cycle, the sales cycle was a lot shorter for commercial consumer products. So yeah, I don't do anything with Surefire. I went there, a senior manager in North America for Surefire. I was only there about 5 months. It was not.
Okay.
Sometimes companies aren't always as nice on the inside as they appear on the outside. You know, the culture has to be right, and if it's not, get out of there. So Pelican was great, but you learn a lot there. So you learn a lot from people who are in the industry pros. Um, you know, my profile picture in here was me on stage at a Pelican, um, giving a talk at a Pelican event. And yeah, I really like them. And they're a great company, great product, great company. So, but to answer your question, there's you know, trying to figure everything out all at once is not always easy, but ask people questions. Having commercial products within Advisor Tactical is not a problem. The only problem I ran into was during the pandemic when I was selling PPE into hospitals and other health organizations. They didn't really want to buy from Advisor Tactical. So I started another LLC called Advisor Medical. And we ran a lot of product through Advisor Medical as a DBA under Advisor Tactical. So they never would get to see it, but we could, I guess, be more conscientious of the buyers and what they're looking for, which is healthcare and medical products, not tactical products. So, yeah.
Yeah, that actually brings up a very good point because there are a few people here who have that entrepreneurial spirit who do want to start their own things. So you brought up a DBA. Explain that to the people here who want to start a business but ran into the same situation as you.
Which situation was that?
With like, no one wanted to deal with someone branded tactical for PPE stuff. So
Oh,
why
that's
did you
right.
start that? What is DBA?
Oh yeah,
So
so it's once you get so when you first thing I did when I accidentally got that first job was I went down and got my business license, and once you have your business license, you can add a doing business as to your parent company. And you can do it for a number of reasons. You could do it because maybe you're also supplying the contract work on something else, but you don't want it to look like they're all your companies. You can have multiple companies underneath the parent company. Anybody that does a little research could find it on the state website wherever your LLC is incorporated and be able to see that there's DBAs assigned to you. But in my case, I just added a DBA so that the billing and everything, and as soon as you do it, I use GoDaddy a lot. As soon as you register for it, advisormedical.com was available real easy. Now you have Jamie at advisormedical.com, and now you're write your checks to Advisor Medical, no problem. They don't know that the parent account is Advisor Tactical Products. And even if it became, something that came up in conversation, it just seems like a division of. You can have a division of Advisor Tactical, and it can be whatever you like. We own the brand Old Army. Advisor Tactical owns that brand. They're listed on the USPTO trademark as the owner. But I also have Old Army LLC separate from that. So there's a lot of different things you can do with your company. They provide you with a lot of flexibility. But you also want to be careful. You don't need a whole bunch of these things floating around out there. You don't need them.
perfect. Thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any more questions for Jamie? So I got a few more for you guys. Normally they're a little quiet today, but they are coming back from the lunch break, so they're probably still digesting everything. You brought up consulting versus selling, and that is something I really do like to push on, and that's something we like to do here at Seven Eagle when we're chatting with people. When it comes down to that consultative approach, what are you listening for? What are those key indicators so you can sit there and bring that solution and solve that problem for your client?
Well, I think the number one thing is um, we all like to share information that we have accumulated over years, and the hardest part is not giving everything away for free. And because it's easy for us to just talk someone through a problem and then you just consulted them through your years of business knowledge and problems you faced before. Um, that's a big piece of it. But recognizing where there might be a problem, asking the questions of how that affects their business, and what if that was to be solved, how would that affect your revenue, and different questions that circle back into what's important to them. So you're not talking about yourself all the time. And then if the need is there, like if you've identified the need, then you can offer them a consulting opportunity. I have had a lot of experience in this area, and I'd love to talk with you more about it. Maybe we can um, get a consulting agreement going, and there's other papers and stuff you sign to keep your information private. But yeah, that's kind of the way you go, because you want to let them know that you're knowledgeable without telling them everything. You got to hold it back, be disciplined enough to hold that information back, but let them know that you're well versed in that area, and then use that as in your pitch. That in my experience, I've done all these different things, and I think that there could be a lot of value to your company here if we could solve that problem. Would that be a value to you? Well, yes. Then there's an opportunity there. And then you got your non-disclosure agreements, of course, that they have to sign, that they won't disclose information that you're providing to them to anyone else, outside of the organizational scope.
That's 1000%, and that's really rare in this day and age that you had that proactiveness. And that was something when I did my first civilian career, when I retired, I was a learning and development manager for a fairly large organization, $44 billion. And I had to literally argue with every single sales director for the segment I was supporting. I'm like, it's consultative. We can't be sitting here doing this and just handing it all out, because people are going to go out and just go buy everything from other places, and they want to be able to, and you build that relationship, and then they become your friends overall. To that extent, what do you think for you is, what was one of the biggest errors that you made with doing all of this? And if you could rewind the clock with the knowledge you had now, where would you go back to, and what would you change? And you can be as broad as you want, so you're not superly specific.
Well, a couple lessons that you learn along the way. One is start sooner. You can do this while you're still serving. You can start well, I call it a brand portfolio. And although I don't have it sitting right here, it's basically a little binder, and inside of it, it's all your sleeve protectors. And inside of my binder, as you're building your trademarks, is you're accumulating assets. Like I have 833 Old Army for a toll-free, which everything's toll-free now, but I mean, for a general number to call in, somebody can call in 833 Old Army. So I accumulated that. I ended up getting the oldarmy.com, which, had I not done certain things the way I did, I wouldn't have been able to get that for less than like 30 grand. But I ended up getting it for 3,000 because I started my website and I started using oldarmy.us, and I got my trademark on Old Army in all the categories that I wanted, including online retail. And so now if anyone else tried to do anything with Old Army and online retail, I own it. USPTO would protect me. So I let the owners know of oldarmy.com that unless they're going to sell that to someone doing an unrelated item not available for online sales, like Old Army septic pumping services or something, you're never going to be able to use it. And so I got that for 3,000. So what I'm saying is start early, kick your ideas around. I have a great trademark attorney, which they're not expensive, and you'll make sure their things are done right, and also can help you protect your trademark. I mean, that was invaluable when I got into a lawsuit with Old Navy. So when we had I put in for the clothing line because I had textiles already, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, and stuff. And so we put in for the trademark, and Old Navy opposed us. Well, back then, a friend of mine sent that information over to Tucker Carlson, he said, well, I'm not really interested in this, but let me get it over to my friends at Fox and Friends because I think Pete Hegseth would be interested in hearing about this. And so then I get a call from my attorney, and I had no idea this was going on behind the scenes. And my attorney said, hey, could you hold off on any discussions with, um, with about this whole opposing your old Army stuff? And I said, what are you talking about? And it says, well, Fox and Friends is calling them every day, wanting to know why they would oppose an Army veteran from trying to grow a business when they never served a day in the Navy because they're owned by the Gap. And I said I didn't call and talk to Fox and Friends. So we had a nice meeting, and they wrote me some letters saying that they won't oppose me for licensing clothing. But everyone should be able to start kicking good ideas around now. You can do your own USPTO search yourself and just look up names, look up images to try and find out if your idea or your product name is already out there protected. Mine was out there many times, but it said abandoned, abandoned, abandoned. I couldn't figure out why it was abandoned until the Old Navy thing, because they got a lot of money and they just had to abandon it. I just didn't put in for that category because now I have a letter and I know that they're going to oppose every person that ever tries to do old Army clothing. So there's that. There's that one. You want to make sure that you have start early and the other thing is never give away anything without assigning a value to it, even if it's your great advice and you're trying to help somebody, or you're giving away a product that you got as a sample, but apply a value to it before you give anything away. And I learned a big lesson when I was doing some real estate items, and I've had one guy I knew who was trying to sell land, but he couldn't sell the land. It was really difficult. Then I met another guy who was a builder, and he said, well, I could build more houses. I just need more land. And so I got everybody together to do land home packages. When the guy already owns the land, the guy already builds the houses. Let's build them and then sell them and get paid on the back end. And it was great. It worked out really great. Well, then nobody seemed interested in it for a while. And I drove by this area and I see they're doing construction on it. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So they took the ideas. They didn't need me because I gave them all the advice for free. So I learned a lot from that. So just be cautious. Your experience has a lot of value. Don't just give it away.
That sounds absolute. That's the one thing that I tell everyone here is find yourself that job. And if you want to have that entrepreneurial spirit, get on it super quickly. And much to like what Jamie did, most of you guys know my background. Imagine, the people who I know from the Green Beret community who are literally doing these consulting gigs and everything on the side as their side gig before they sit there and they go into the rotation pool. That's how they really started up a lot of the things that you see now, especially, the big names you see on YouTube and everywhere. We only got a couple of minutes left here, Jamie. So the chat is a little bit quiet today. So in closing, if there's any real big piece of wisdom that you've kind of left out, what would you say to everyone here who's hitting that skill bridge and hitting that transition? What's that one little piece of advice you would leave with us?
I think life's too short to work with people you don't like, or with products you don't like. You'll know if it feels natural, and if it does, the entrepreneurial piece is there's a great way to do that for you to work for yourself, but start early, do your research, do your brainstorming, come up with names. I mean, I'd have a whole page of different company names and product names, and you just start working through them and picking out, if I had to pick out my top three, start with that, do your USPTO search, find to make sure that it's defendable, and get your products in line. If you need help and support finding manufacturers, reach out to people who do that, and start getting some ideas. I go and I talk to manufacturers all the time. And I have, like tomorrow, I have a call with Rock River Arms about doing an old Army reissue M16A1. That would be phenomenal to license that out and have a cool product with old Army on it, and some other firearms companies, So there's a market for that. There's a collector, you build a collectible product like that, it'll just be something that lasts forever because people, collectors collect. So anyway, that's all. Start early, have confidence in yourself, look at what it is you really want to do. When I was a kid, I didn't ever understood when someone said, well, what do you really like to do? And that's what you should go do work in. Well, I like hunting and fishing and outdoor stuff. There's no job for that. I'm not going to be a hunting guide. Well, it turned out, and it took 30 years for me to figure it out. There is a lot of work to do in the two-way industry or hunting products and firearms, ammunition. So, and that's where I ended up. I would love to have started earlier. So, but that's about it.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. Well, Jamie, thank you very much for your time. Do greatly appreciate it. And I hope the state of Washington doesn't jam you up any further than how it has been. I know that I hear the rumor mills of everyone jumping over to Coeur d'Alene and everything. But Jamie, again, thank you very much for your time. We do have a question in the chat. And if you could throw it into the larger chat, or I can do it for you. We're getting requests to get people connected with you on LinkedIn. So if you want me to do that for you, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I can, if you want to share it out.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm just under James Blackhart on LinkedIn, and you'll see that same picture of me addressing, looking like I'm important, and pretty sure that was staged.
Oh, come on now. You are an important individual. All right, fantastic. Well, I'll get that out to the chat for everyone. Again, thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know, who am I handing this off to? Who else is here from the group? Just trying to see. My apologies. Brian, do you know who's coming up next? Or Derek?
Yeah, I am. I'm next. I'm here.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm going to